Hi, I'm Effie and this is going to be the latest episode of vampire books that I've read recently. This video is covering a roughly 2-month period of time and there will be one further episode remaining this year, so more vampire books to come. This isn't the end of it. So there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 vampire books that I have to speak about today, and I would say they run kind of the gamut from vampire books that I really loved and highly recommend to vampire books I thought weren't great, and there are a couple of mid vampire books in there as well. So first off, we're going to talk about A Thing Divine by Ryan Adara. This is a dark erotic horror, I think it's defined as, and its main characters are Evie, who is a human woman, and Will, who is a very old vampire. For as long as Evie can remember, she's been having dreams about this dark, mysterious man, and then whilst on a tour of a stately home, she smells the most delicious smell she's ever smelled, and she follows her nose and ends up coming face to face with the very man she's been dreaming about for years. And that would be Will, and the smell just happens to be the smell of fresh blood. So this book is kind of a short and sweet romance between the two of them. Turns out that Evie is the reincarnated dead lover of Will, and it just goes some dark and twisted ways, and I really enjoyed the way that it didn't shy away from being very violent. It was just delicious. Like, she literally holds his heart in her hands. So fun. Like, not gonna be everyone's taste because it is very but I had a really good time with it, and I am excited to read more from this author. Let's sigh. The Hunter's Gambit by Seal Perlo is what is it? It's a book where every so often the vampires crown a human as their king or queen, and they live the lap of luxury, being doted on for 3 days, and then at the end of that period of time they are then sacrificed as part of a ritual to keep the vampire temple, I think, standing. What I really liked about this book was messy, slutty, bisexual vampires. Like, that is very much on brand for me. I love messy characters. I love books with bisexual rap. I love it when they are slutty. Also, it's poly. It was just so many boxes of things that I love being ticked off. And I'm very excited to read more from Perlo. I bought her previous book, Bluebird, which I think is a sci-fi, and she's got a book coming out in 2025, which I think is called Terms of Service, and I'm excited to read that one as well. Like, neither of those are vampire, but I just thought I'd point out that, like, Seal is doing something really cool with her writing, and I'm very excited to read more from her. A Heart of Desire and Deceit by Elena Argalia is the second book in the Choosing Chronicles, I believe it's called, a duology that is pitched as Crescent City meets Love is Blind. A vampire enters into a blind dating competition, reality TV experience, and her only goal is to make a specific fae, fall in love with her, marry her, and then she's going to off him on their wedding night, except along the way she ends up catching feelings. And this is the second part of the duology, obviously. I think I said that. So it's following on from kind of what happened after their wedding night. It's like, so here's the thing, it's not the absolute best in the world, but it's very enjoyable, very compulsive reading. And if you like books that contain a shadow mommy rather than a shadow daddy, you'll really enjoy this. Also, there's something so delicious about the way that she attacks and protects. Also, these characters do actually like work through their problems, and it's really enjoyable to see these characters who still have a lot of feelings for each other, but there has been a breakdown of trust, and seeing them kind of war between those emotions and then eventually work through them was a really enjoyable aspect of this book for me. My Vampire Plus One by Jenna Levine is a sort of sequel, but in the like standalone companion novel way, to My Roommate is a Vampire, which I actually haven't read. In this book, our female main character agrees to, or asks, a vampire to enter into a fake dating situation in order to get her family off her case. I don't know, I had, like, overall I had a good time with this book, but there is an element of it that like kind of annoyed me, because the vampire was like very upfront about the fact that he is a vampire with her, but she just like kept brushing it off and was oblivious, and that really annoyed me. But at the same time, it is believable, because if you live in a world where like vampires aren't a real thing, then you're probably not going to take someone at face value when they tell you that they are a vampire. But it was a bit irritating. But I think overall, like, the romance was quite enjoyable. They seemed to go on a journey together, and there was also like a fun, kind of stupid but in an enjoyable way, sort of side plot where like people were trying to track down the vampire for something that he didn't even do. And then at the end you've got this like suggestion that there may be like a witchy companion novel coming next, which I think would be quite enjoyable to read. How to Bite Your Neighbour and Win a Wager by D.N. Bryn, I think, is an vampire romance where a young man's mother has gone missing, and he believes that the way to find out what's happened is to get in with this pharmaceutical company called Vitalis Baron, and they've basically said, right, well, you're hired, but you need to bring a vampire to us. And then he catches a vampire breaking into his home to drink his blood in his sleep, and he's like, well, this guy's like breaking into my home and drinking my blood whilst I'm asleep, so clearly he's not a good guy, let me utilize him. And then there's a little bit of like a wild goose chase kind of thing where Vitalis Baron are after this vampire, and then he's also like, and the guy whose mother's gone missing is also like, should I not? Because he ends up starting to develop feelings for the vampire. And I think, see, the thing is, it's been a minute since I read this book, but I remember absolutely loving it, and it being like one of the best books I read in that period of time. And I'm very excited to read more from this world. I think it's because this world feels really well established. It feels like the author's taken the time to fully understand what this world looks like, how everything seems to work. And then also the romance is so well written that I'm very much on board for it, and will be reading more from this series going forward. Immortal Dark by Tigges Gurma is a YA, maybe into new adult territory. book where we're following a young woman who is basically told that if she doesn't attend this magical, I don't know if magical is the right word, sort of university, then her inheritance will be forfeit to the vampire that she believes murdered her sister. So she's obviously not going to let that happen. Also, she sees this as an opportunity to get close to that vampire and hopefully end him. So it starts off very much like an enemy situation. These characters despise each other, but they're in close proximity. And then very slowly, you've got like murder mysteries going on, but also these characters start to get along, they start to catch feelings for one another, and then it becomes this really sizzling romance between the two. And there's also a lot of intricate political, vampire secret society things happening, which just adds to the enjoyment of this story. And I am very much eagerly anticipating the sequel, which I think is coming out next year, hopefully. I believe this book is part of a trilogy, so please, I want it now. Forever Red by Harvey Oliver Baxter is mostly a prequel but also slightly a sequel to Fallen Thorns. It follows the formation and the kind of first 10 years of the band Forever Red, who you meet somewhat briefly peripherally in Fallen Thorns. Like, they are kind of key characters, but Fallen Thorns is more about Arlo's story, whereas Forever Red is the story of Ben and Casper, the two main members of Forever Red. And it's so gorgeously written as these characters fall in love and then get to spend their life together. It's also absolutely devastating. Like, if you've read Fallen Thorns, you can see it counting down to where the books cross over, and you just know that something terrible is going to happen. And I think having read Fallen Thorns first and knowing what's about to happen makes for such an incredible experience, because you're seeing all this foreshadowing and it makes things a lot more emotional. And then getting a little snippet of Forever Red after the events of Fallen Thorns was really enjoyable to read. And there's also a hint that something may end up happening in the sequel, and I'm excited to see how that plays out. Vampires Never Say Die by Gloria Duke was the one vampire book from this collection that I didn't enjoy. I think it's another one where it's a book too, but it's a companion novel series. And basically this bartender come actress is triggered into becoming a slayer, because what happens is every time a new vampire is created, a slayer is also created as a kind of balance thing. And the slayers are born out of hatred of the person who has become a vampire. So already they're off to a very adversarial place. But what didn't work for me was the fact that I don't think enough care was put into how the Slayer's character was written, because as part of becoming a Slayer, she experiences physical changes, and obviously that's going to cause body dysmorphia and be very uncomfortable. But I just thought that it didn't quite work. It felt like muscle mass was being conflated to fat, and I couldn't get on board with it. And then there was also an element of the story where she had to choose between sacrificing something that was important to her and love, and like it takes a really skilled writer to pull that off, and I don't think that Duke was that writer in this instance. And then the final book was His Mate by Vengeance by Mel H's, and this is a wolf shifter vampire romance. The vampire is a slutty little assassin, and the wolf shifter is, I think, head of security for his wolf pack. It's set in a city where you've basically got 3 crime families that are 3 different groups of supernaturals. So you've got the Lunetti pack, who are wolf shifters, and they are in charge of the guns trade. You've got, I think they're called the Elemental MC, Motorcycle Club, and they are witches and they're in control of the drugs. And then you have the Cruel Coven, who are the vampires, and they are in charge of trafficking. And the place that this story begins is the assassin has been framed for an attempt on the leader of the Cruel Coven's Coven. So a favour is called in, and basically the wolf shifters are then tasked with protecting him. So in order to do that, he is set up in a safe house with the wolf shifter, who is the head of security for the Lunetti pack. So they're in close proximity, and there's an immediate connection between the two. And it is like, it's mostly a romance, but also a what's gone on with this attempt on the leader of the Cruel Coven. And there's just something about the way these books are written that is so delicious, and I had such a fantastic time reading it. I think it's the fact that the banter is so good. Like, clearly time has been taken to establish this romance, and it doesn't feel like shortcuts are being taken. It feels like there's a mutual respect between the characters. I also liked that these characters are not young. Like, these are both very long-lived paranormal creatures, so they're not just in their 20s. I think they're in, like, I think one's 50 and one's 70, which added a really cool element to the story for me. I feel like I'm not pitching this well enough, but I absolutely adore the Lunetti pack books, and this is the first in the series, and I cannot get enough. Like, I could reread and reread this book because it's so good. But yeah, those are all the vampire books for today's episode. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know if any of these vampire books sound good to you, and also let me know if you've got any recommendations for me, because I'm always interested in hearing about more vampire books. But until next time, love you. Bye.